topic today. I think Mark would be proud of us, but I think those of us who know Mark and have worked alongside of him are proud to have known him, and we mourn his loss along with his co-chairs and his co-workers, but also with his family here in the community. In the first week of December, about 15 or so GMC and community members will sit down once again with our superintendent of MPS to discuss the progress that's been made on the MPS operational review and other aspects of how we can continue to better knit MPS back into the fabric of this community. We've had one of these conversations already. I think the superintendent thought.
We started as a grant maker. That's what we did. Every once in a while we'd have people come and we'd have a little conversation. Now we call that convening, and we also do a whole lot of other things, including loans, neighborhood engagement, and leadership, and I'll touch on that a little bit. And we started with, I don't know, $6 million a year. Now we're up to $35 million a year. And over those years, we've granted about $500 million. Over $500 million, I should say. I don't know if my communications people are in here, but no, I had to say the word over. Our family history, just briefly, some of you were blessed to know my father and my mother and Isabel Bader. My father was a child refugee, twice actually, double child refugee. First time he was a refugee from Nazi Austria, and the second time actually from England. Ultimately ended up in Canada and then here in Milwaukee. Started a little company in a garage actually over on Booth Street, about 7 blocks from here. That little company grew and grew and grew. Became Aldrich Chemical Company, then Sigma Aldrich Chemical Company, and then was acquired by Merck, Germany, international company. And then he made the astounding decision early, actually pretty early in his life, to leave all of that, leave all of his personal wealth to charity. My mother, a very different journey. She grew up in Aberdeen, South Dakota, came here to go to college, Downer College here, which is no longer based here. And she worked with my father to help build the company. Unfortunately, their marriage did not survive, so she went off on her own, got her degree in social work at UWM, which is now the Helen Bader School of Social Welfare, and she also committed her wealth to charity. And then finally, the third founder is my father's second wife, Isabel Bader. She was born in Canada. She went to England, was a English and drama teacher, came here to marry my father, very engaged in the community, very, very engaged in global philanthropy. It was her heart and soul. She died when she was 95, and she was really amazing. As I know a lot of you have had an opportunity to work with a person at that age. She was so focused and so deliberate about her philanthropy, and literally drove me crazy. But she was great, and so she also committed her wealth to charity. The mission of the foundation, guided by a number of things. I want to first talk about our values. It is the DNA of who we are as a foundation. So values of dignity, compassion, humility, integrity, and service. It is what we believe in. It is what we do. It's what we try to practice on a daily basis. We also have a number of practices. I'm going to touch on those in just a minute. Cultural intentionality, embedded philanthropy, continuous improvement, and of course, good governance. Cultural intentionality is something that we've been working on here at the foundation. It is our framework. It is our framework for our organizational culture in the building, outside the building, here in Milwaukee, wherever we are. It's a complex structure. I'm not going to go through it on the big thing on the left. They're on the walls. We have some pamphlets out there if you want to read it. But just for us to think about, like, what is it that we're trying to do here, and how do we do it? So we have to start with ourselves. I know all of us, including myself, had to do a little bit of personal work, right? I had to understand who I was as an individual, how I tick, and then from there, I can go and I can understand you, right? And it's really important for me to start with me, but then you. And with all of that, then the building blocks start, right? Then we start treating each other with respect, and we start building relationships and building trust. We believe in having the same set of rules for everybody, which maybe that seems like a simple thing to you, but in philanthropy, that's not always true. Different people have different rules. We try to set that standard that everyone has the same set of rules. We try to provide equal access to resources. So we're a public foundation with a public application process. We get every day somebody's calling me, right? And it's great. I mean, it's a lot, but we want to provide that access because from that access, really, we get the most amazing ideas and the most amazing thoughts, and it really pushes us to the boundaries and makes us a better organization. And finally, just to touch on this, sharing the success, the credit for success, right? Again, it's sort of a thing that we all think we do, but in philanthropy, there's this little thing called a wealth power dynamic, right? We got the money, you want the money. The way that philanthropy works is that there's a lot of applause to the funders. That's just how it works. That's how fundraising works. And we try to change that. We still like the applause, and a lot of you in this organization have given me awards, so I appreciate that, given the foundation awards. But we understand that we all did this together, and we have to work together as a team. So these are some of our fundamentals. There's a lot more to it. If you're interested, let me know. Also want to talk about embedded philanthropy. So you're here. You're in a building, in a very nice building in the central city. This was very intentional. We came here in 2018. A lot of you have been here. By the way, welcome, Mayor. I'm sorry, I didn't say hello to you earlier. The Mayor has been here a lot. District Attorney has been here a lot. It is what we do. And not only do we have people from government here as well, but we work with the neighborhood a lot. We are engaged with the neighborhood. It allows us to do some really interesting things. One of the things that we've done is we help develop nonprofits and businesses that serve this neighborhood. Really proud of that. And we've developed a very extensive neighborhood engagement network here through various efforts, which I'm going to touch on in a moment. One of the things that's a little new to us is a few years ago we started a leadership institute, Bader Leadership Institute. We're in our second year of that. The reason we did that is we believe in leadership. And I think all of us in the room hopefully agree with that. I think we all do. And there's a lot of leadership in this room, right? There's a ton of leadership in this room. But I think that most of us would agree that actually, and I think the mayor would agree with me on this, there's not enough leadership in this community. We just need more. And we need people to really think hard and work together as a team and come up with new ideas and push the boundaries. So we created the Bader Leadership Institute, which is a philanthropy-based leadership institute, right? A little different. We're the only one in this area. I think we're one of the few in the country that does this. So we have a cohort. We're on our second cohort. They, as a cohort, do a lot of things, a lot of leadership stuff, but they also are grant makers. And so we take our little corner of the world, our little fun thing that we do, which is give money away, and we work with them. And it's a journey, and I think over a period of 5 years or more, we're going to see some results from that. It's a little early to look for results there, but it's a fun and exciting and, for us, innovative project. Grant making. We have 4 pillars of what we do: healthy aging, revitalizing Milwaukee, international, and founders' interests. You all know us mostly from revitalizing Milwaukee, but we do a lot more. I want to just touch on going wide and coming into Milwaukee. As I mentioned, we fund in 8 countries, all different kinds of things, all different kinds of populations. We are actually one of the few foundations that operate in the country of Israel that work with Jews, Arab citizens, and Palestinians. We've been doing that for a long time. We made it through the last couple of years. I'm not quite sure how we made it through the last couple of years, but we made it through the last couple of years, and we still do that. In addition to that, we work in Central Europe and Romania, Hungary, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Austria, Poland. And we have this great, amazing opportunity to work with these incredible populations of people, very different from each other, and they teach us a lot about them, but also about us as well. In addition to that, we have founders' interests. My father, as some of you know, was an art collector, an art historian. We actually, if you get a chance to wander around past the coffee pots later, on the other side of that wall, we have some replicas of his paintings. There's no Rembrandts in house, but they're not here. But he had 5 Rembrandts at one point. So there's a lot of things that he was really interested in, that my mother was really interested in, that Isabel is really interested in, that we still fund and do all over the world. In Wisconsin, we fund healthy aging. This is something I don't think a lot of people know. We are all over the state. We get it's a real unique opportunity to get to know people, honestly, who grew up in a very different way than I grew up, right? I'm a city boy. have been a city boy, probably will always be a city boy. I get a little nervous when I get out there, and the local Starbucks is like an hour away. I don't do so well with that. But we do. We have a team that works out there in rural Wisconsin, working with the elderly and with people with chronic illness, specifically Alzheimer's disease, but also people that are just struggling. And it's been really interesting to us. We were talking earlier about food security, and food security, as some of you may know, in the rural areas is a whole different thing, like a whole different thing. It's just we have food, we have restaurants and grocery stores all over the place here. There, they may not have a grocery store in their county, right? They're where they may be buying their groceries at Quick Trip or at the dollar store. And so it's a whole different dynamic there. So we do quite a bit of funding in rural Wisconsin. And again, it's a way for us to learn a different set of problems, a set of challenges that we incorporate in everything we do. So here we are, Milwaukee. Most of you know us for this work. We do a lot in Milwaukee. I'm not going to get into everything, but addiction recovery, community matters, neighborhood engagement, the arts, urban education, youth development. These are things we do all over this area. This represents about $12 million per year for us. I did want to touch on community matters. Did I go past one? Oh, I think a slide got dropped. Okay. Well, I want to touch on community matters because community matters for us is really talking about the basic needs of the community, right? And if you look at Maslow's pyramid, the slide was Maslow's pyramid. If you look at Maslow's pyramid and you look at the bottom two layers, that's what we do. That's what we do when we talk about community matters. It's the basic needs that most of us in this room take for granted, right? The stuff that we know we don't have to worry about. There's a lot of people in this community that worry about a lot of things in their life, and so our biggest grants program within Revitalizing Milwaukee is just that. It's just focusing on the basic needs for the community, and I know many of us here are supporters of United Way, and of course applaud that work, and it's what we do in Community Matters is very similar to United Way. Neighborhood engagement. This is the activity that brings me to the point of public safety. As I mentioned, we have a team here at the foundation, spends time in the community. We have actually in this room, 6 or 8 times a year, we have something called Chat with Bader. And we have neighbors come here and have conversations. Sometimes they're topic driven, sometimes they're just loose conversations. And really just getting to know them and what their challenges are, what their hopes and desires are. We also have a barbecue here, which you're all welcome to in 2026. We do a trunk or treat thing we just did where we work with the children in the area and we help give out candy. Well, we actually don't give out candy. We give out apples, toothpaste, and toothbrushes, just so in case anyone was checking on that. And then we are a big participant in Juneteenth Day because it runs down here. All that said, we interact with over 2,000 residents per year. They told me the number was just under 2,500. And what that does is that gives us this unique opportunity to have real conversations, right? And just talk about stuff. And it's been really good for us. It's really changed who we are as an organization, as a funder, because the nature of philanthropy is that nonprofit development professionals from nonprofit come to you with these really beautiful proposals, which are well thought out and well developed, tend to have perfect outcomes, at least on paper. And when you talk with the real people, you get a different side of it, right? And so that's been really, really helpful for us. We've helped work with nonprofits here in the community. One of the partnerships that we're, I think, the most proud of lately is Milwaukee Police Department. We've done some grant making with them. We know they're the folks very well out of District 5, done a lot of stuff with them, and it's been really good for us, right? We've had, just like any entity in the central city, we've had challenges, right? There's a homicide right across the street, right? If you go on the tour, you're going to see one of our bullet holes, right? It's real, right? It's what happens in the central city. And we have been very grateful and fortunate to have a strong relationship with MPD. So what I want to talk about as I transition to Langston is sort of like, where are we and what do we hear, right? And I spent the last couple of weeks just asking that question of people, what do you think about public safety? And what I got to tell you is it's very mixed, right? Some people are like, yeah, I think it's, I'm feeling better about it. And other people are like, I don't feel safe. Like, I just don't feel safe. And I think the one determining factor that I seems to come out of that conversation is their connection in any way, in a positive way, to the police department. If they have met one of the safety officers, if they've been to an event, if they've participated, if they feel any sense of comfort with MPD and one of the officers or one of the districts, then they feel a little better about the situation. If the police are just them, just those guys that they're scared of and they're afraid of interacting with, then they don't feel as safe. And that's, it's, as I said, it's a real mixed. I know we're going to talk about it. Langston's going to talk about it. I was hoping for that one answer. What I was hoping they were going to tell me was it's getting better, but I didn't get that from everybody. I got that from a few people. So that's the work we do. Welcome to the foundation. As I said, if you, I'm going to be around afterwards. If you want to talk some more, if you want a tour of the full building, happy to do that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Langston.
Thank you much. Let's get our slides set up here. First off, I'm Langston Verdin, Director of Community Partnerships and Strategy here at the Greater Milwaukee Committee. So if we haven't met before, let's meet, let's talk. So as Joel mentioned, I lead the work on behalf of the committee to connect on our public safety work. And so this work is important to me. I grew up 6 blocks that way, own a home, maybe a mile this way, right? And my family still lives in this community. So it's very important, as it is, I'm sure, to a lot of you. So I want to invite our panelists up to the table here, tables, so we can start our discussion. Come on up, y'all. Come on up. Yep, come on up. We'll do it all at once. I don't have like very in-depth bios or anything like that, so we'll save time for that. But I do want to invite our panelists, Heather Hough, Chief of Staff at the City of Milwaukee Police Department, Kent Lovern, District Attorney for Milwaukee County, and David Mohammed, Deputy Director of the Milwaukee County Health Department for this conversation. So first off, thank you all for joining us. These folks have been tremendous partners as we navigate this public safety landscape with our community, but obviously very important to the work in general. And I'm sure a lot of you all have had the opportunities to partner and work with these folks as well. So we're gonna start off with our conversation here. I've got a couple questions for them. Then we're gonna take some time at your tables to kind of debrief and talk about opportunities for collaboration, specifically related to public safety. And then we'll invite our panelists back up. We'll do a brief Q&A, and then we'll start wrapping up the day. So, Heather, we're going to start with you. So we've heard from the mayor and others about the positive improvements related to public safety, but as Dan indicated, sometimes it doesn't always feel that way. Sometimes they can just feel like numbers, right? In the last 12 months, which outcome has moved the needle the most? And what precisely drove that change?
Okay, do I have to put, is it on?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay. Thank you for asking that question. Yes, there are 2 ways to look at crime. There's the crime data, which in the city of Milwaukee is indeed trending down in almost all of the categories. There's also the perception, how safe people feel in this community, and that one doesn't match the crime trends. And so as a police department, we need to reflect and keep in mind both of those. You asked what's moving the needle most, and for that, there's no data set that can tell us that. I wish there was. The Public Policy Forum does a lot of great work. I know they've worked with the GMC, but causation is really difficult. What I can tell you anecdotally is I believe in the police department, because we're constantly looking at crime trends, what drives people to commit crimes, those who don't reoffend and those who do. And I can tell you what we see is when there is real community engagement, a sense of community with individuals, it assists in driving both crime down in the numbers and perception. And some of the areas we're most proud of is, we do law enforcement and we kind of are reactionary. We respond to crimes when they occur, we arrest people and deliver them to the justice system, but we also do the best we can to do community engagement and especially youth engagement, because we think education is really important for both parents and youth, and also just connecting with officers. Like Mr. Bader said, positive interactions with officers in their uniforms really make a difference on that perception. And so in the last year, one of the things as I thought about this question, we're really excited about is SROs. We're partnering with Milwaukee Public Schools, and it's not just our officers in those schools. Those officers are doing great work, mentoring, coming up with programs with the students. But it's the way we're interacting with MPS now in a really positive way. So for instance, we've seen trends where people are targeting children online, and we've seen crimes occur. And before, we'd push that message out to our audiences, which aren't the parents of kids. They aren't the kids themselves. They're the people who follow us on our social media accounts. But now we're working with the communications people at MPS, and we're getting in front of the parent coordinators, and we're really working together as a community to address some of the issues and get information out, and the Mayor's Camp Rise program and other youth engagement where we're working with others. So my answer to your question is, what are we seeing that's moving the needle? I think more community connections. It's not all just the Milwaukee Police Department, it's certainly everybody who's in the space of building community, and we just want everyone to know we're at that table.
Great, and we're going to talk about how we sustain some of this as well. David, I want to turn to you. We're in a room full of business leaders here in the Milwaukee area, and often, whether we like it or not, ROI is really important and comes up a lot, right? As you think about prevention strategies, what prevention strategies have delivered the clearest ROI that you see, whether it's youth employment, hospital-based violence intervention programs, domestic violence prevention, et cetera? And ultimately, why did it work?
Thank you. When you ask a question like this, and I have to say this, in a room of philanthropy and other partners, we have to break the narrative of picking winners and losers in terms of strategies. I will say what has brought the numbers down in Milwaukee, what did it prior to COVID and what's doing it after COVID. So when you see a 53% reduction in group-based violence, and you see 13% reduction in non-fatal shootings as well as youth gun violence, we are seeing things trend down. Those things did not happen on accident. The investment in the ecosystem is what is helping to make that happen. And so as Heather stated, that direct connection with individuals in the community who are highest at risk, that connecting them to resources, whether it was 4-1 for Life or the Office of Community Wellness and Safety, or the coordination that's taking place at the Violence Response Public Health Safety Team with Connie Kostelak and the Medical College of Wisconsin, that effort has brought results, but it's the amount of investment that brings the kind of dramatic investment or results that people want to see. So when they see a city like Boston or a city like Baltimore or Newark, New Jersey, that was at one time leading the nation in homicides and non-fatal shootings, you're seeing cities that have had double-digit decreases. Milwaukee is having double-digit decreases in non-fatal shootings, but we have an uptick in homicide. There's more work to be done. So I wouldn't take any tool or instrument off the table. I would say we need more in terms of intimate partner violence. We need more in terms of public health messaging related to the accidental discharge of firearms in the home. We need more to direct outreach efforts that are working to connect folks. We all heard of broken windows policing, correct? Well, we want to advance the concept of broken windows prevention, where we see individuals in neighborhoods that are hardest hit by disinvestment and by the effects of some of the challenges that Milwaukee has suffered from for decades, who have easier access to firearms and have more economic and social stresses that drive up those numbers. And we know that work should continue, should increase, and I would say that the time to invest especially given what we're seeing now in community, is going to be more crucial if we want to make Milwaukee safer in hard times ahead.
And just a quick follow-up, David, with that, and thanks for that great response. When you all do your work and you're out in the community, are there specific neighborhoods that you're targeting, and what are you learning while you're there?
So absolutely. I mean, I think if you look at the first Blueprint for Peace, that targeted 10 neighborhoods, 10 priority neighborhoods. This is one of them. When you look at some of the data that Connie and her team are putting out at the medical college, you see that there's a target area where we've been working together in cooperation to deploy resources, to engage residents, and for law enforcement, because it's not an either or, it's a both and, to do enforcement strategies that are smart and work without disrupting neighborhoods. And we've seen decreases in focus areas. We've looked at other areas and trends where there's needs. But just as it is about priority neighborhoods, we have to deal with priority individuals as well, because we know that sometimes violence travels. But bottom line is, where people feel safer is where they feel like they can get access to resources to make their lives better, and where they have stronger connection to institutions. So that's where we see in Milwaukee. We're all over the county, and we're in neighborhoods like this one. We're in communities on the south side as well. But we see a whole increase in gun violence on the northwest side of the city. And we don't want to ambulance chase. We want to dig deep and bring numbers down and show how we did it. And we've done some of that, particularly in 53206, 53209, and other zip codes. But it has to be sustained.
Right, I appreciate that. Kent, we're going to pass it to you now. So as you think about your work and where some of the successes and challenges lie, what has been the single recurring bottleneck, whether it's intakes, referrals, data lag, funding, that really slows progress? And what is the concrete fix we can implement in the next quarter or so? And ultimately, who owns that fix?
Well, there's no question we had a slowdown during the pandemic in the court system. Probably always heard that term backlog was a prominent term used for a while. I will say that actually our system got up to speed faster at the height of the pandemic in terms of courts operating, jury trials being had. We actually did that much faster than many of our peer cities, and many cities actually larger than ours. But two things linger from the pandemic that we're still struggling with. One is we have something of a shortage of defense attorneys. We have not only public defenders in our community who, as you probably all know, represent the poorest of the clients we see in our system, but they also have a system of farming out cases that go beyond their staffing to private bar attorneys. And we've simply lost a lot of good private bar attorneys in our community just in the last 5 years. I can think of a number of prominent attorneys who've retired, some have moved, some have simply gotten out of the practice. This is not a unique phenomenon to Milwaukee. We see it statewide, we see it in other states as well, but it's a challenge right now for people who need and deserve counsel to get it. Now, the other thing happening, and my counterparts on the defense bar do point this out to me, and they're right, is that in the last 3 years, my office is charging considerably more cases. So we're putting more cases into the system right now. That happened really after about 2 years of struggling through the pandemic. About 3 years ago, at this time, we sat down with a number of our police chiefs in the county just to talk about what was not working. And frankly, a lot of what was not working was the lack of face-to-face communication that became a result of the pandemic and was really harming our ability to prosecute the cases that I think we'd all agree need to be prosecuted. We're talking about serious crime that impacts neighborhoods. And we developed some systems to improve that, and the result has been, frankly, in the last 3 years, a 25% increase in charging cases. And I think that's significant because the cases are predominantly at the felony level. So these are the cases, as I said, we're concerned about: reckless driving, anything with firearms, sexual assault, domestic violence, and of course, homicide. So I'm not suggesting by any stretch that I have a metric that I'm aspiring to with regard to charging numbers. What I do want to do is meet the needs of the community. And I have heard, as Dan indicated earlier, a lot of insecurity expressed by people in neighborhoods most impacted by crime. And I've heard that very directly for the last few years, particularly serious crime. And so what I would say is that now has contributed to what we're seeing in our system right now with regard to the movement of cases. There's simply more of them now than there were 3 years ago. And the other thing I would add is I talked about the fact that our felony charging in particular is where this emphasis and the increase is really taken. I want to make it clear, we don't take an approach in our office that charges people with felonies only to plea bargain them down to misdemeanors. We don't use charging as a leverage point. I want to make that very clear. It's never been our practice in Milwaukee, and it's not what we do. We just simply have more cases right now, which I think is indicative of the higher rates of crime we saw. In 2021 and 22, we saw astronomically high rates of crime, historically speaking, in Milwaukee, just like about every other community did. So I really think this is a response to what we've seen. And I do think, and while you'll hear me later say, I support everything the police department is doing proactively and the programs David will talk about and the work the mayor's office is doing, I support all of that because I'd like to see fewer people in our system to begin with. I do think that when we talk about what is working, you do have to have a robust response on the enforcement side in a way that's accountable, in a way that measures, in a way that's accountable and proportional to what we're seeing. We have to see that. Everyone expects that, including residents in every single neighborhood. So that's what we're seeing in the court system. Higher cases, higher numbers of jury trials right now, much higher than pre-pandemic levels. And I guess the other thing I would say on the flip side, for lower level offenders, we are still approaching those with a diversionary mindset, with a problem-solving mindset. We have just as many people in our diversionary programs and deferred prosecutions. This is for drug treatment. This is for low-level offenses. This is with the consent of victims. And we've seen a high success rate of that over the years because these are largely nonviolent individuals who need some remediation but don't need the full weight of the criminal justice system. We're doing just as many of those right now as we have been, which I think is important too because it preserves our resources for the more important cases related to public safety.
Great, and I've got some follow-ups for your next question coming back in just a moment. So, but we're going to pass it to Heather for now. And I wanted to talk about some of the innovative things that MPD is doing, specifically around new technologies and the partners that you're working with. What guardrails are in place, specifically thinking about transparency, civil liberties, and what gets shut down if results don't materialize?
So just for the audience sake, the Milwaukee Police Department has been engaging in conversations on a number of levels about our acquisition and use of different types of policing technologies to solve cases. So some of those include drones, cameras, license plate reading cameras, facial recognition technology. And all of these are very controversial topics because just like any police tool, they, when used correctly, create evidence to solve crimes, but when used incorrectly, can cause great harm to the community. And so as we have these conversations, we're hearing it from both sides. One, these are great tools to make us a more efficient department. And by efficient, I mean it frees up our officers to do other things like community engagement, building those relationships, having people in the community seeing officers in a good light, when the evidence is easier to acquire through some of these technologies. That doesn't mean we're going to take any shortcuts and violate anyone's rights by their use. And so what are the guardrails is the question that we have in place or we intend to have in place with some of this technology. So for the public's purpose, we already have drones. We have license plate reading cameras. And we have a Community Connect program that allows private citizens and businesses to connect to the Milwaukee Police Department to, one, register and let us know if you have a camera, if a crime occurs in your neighborhood, or two, allows us the access to that camera footage in real time if a crime occurs, and we need that footage to determine who the suspect is. We have guardrails for all of them. First, we have policies in place that limit our use for particular circumstances and also provides auditing and supervision oversight to our use of that technology. We limit our users of that technology. It's not everybody in the department that has access because, you know, the more people that have access can cause issues with the misuse of the technology. We have an oversight board, the Fire and Police Commission, who audits a number of different functions of the Milwaukee Police Department and accepts complaints. if we, violate our policy or misuse technology. And so that is an independent board that keeps us in check. We now have the Common Council, post-Act 12, that is also monitoring a lot of what the Milwaukee Police Department does and requests communications on a regular basis of some of our activities. We have a chief who believes in transparency. So our use of this technology in some places is completely transparent. For instance, every time we fly a drone, we have a public website that shows you when we flew it, where we flew it, and for what purpose. And so everybody in the public has access to that, and we want people to know how we're using it because the public is the best way to keep us in check. Our next acquisition, we are continuing the conversations. We're hopeful to get facial rec technology. And the purpose of facial rec isn't to identify an arrest based off of those results, but it is to generate leads for our detectives and investigative teams to more efficiently find somebody who's causing imminent danger to the community. So we would only use it in very high-level cases, homicides, sexual assaults, shootings, where there's great harm at stake, and we would have only 2 licenses for 2 users in the department with extensive oversight. So we're having that conversation. We, want to ensure that every use of our technology is in check. And there's one other thing I just want to bring up. We also are still under the Collins Settlement Agreement, which is a settlement agreement related to civil rights. And so there is oversight by way of many of the provisions we're required to comply with for that settlement agreement. That is an additional check on our use of technology.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate that. David, we're going to turn back to you here. Can you give us an example of a neighborhood level collaboration that genuinely shifted conditions? And ultimately, what do you all need from this community to accelerate or support that work, let's say over the next 6 to 12 months?
So a neighborhood-led effort that has genuinely changed conditions. I would say that the work that is being done, particularly in relationship between schools, community efforts, and some of these teams of community violence interventionists has made a significant difference. We've had a number of incidents around Barack Obama High School where young people were driving around with pistols in the air and whatnot. And we've had multiple teams respond, coordinating with MPS. What we found is that a lot of those youth associated at a nearby apartment building worked with the residents to help engage them in cleaning up that apartment complex, worked with those youth to redirect them and connect them to other types of activity, and was able to de-escalate that situation, which happened over the course of the summer. That has been one example. When I think of the incidents that have happened around was it Bradley Tech High School, where we've had numerous response teams that have come even prior to the SROs being in the building. So there is a community violence intervention approach that works with residents or works with different neighborhoods. And then there's a host of efforts that are taking place across the city. One of the biggest things this past summer was we did an 8-week engagement session that reached over 2,000 youth. And it focused heavily in the King Park neighborhood, where Milwaukee County's investments with the new COGS building, with the redevelopment of the King Center, with the development of the 80 homes with Habitat for Humanity, all of that was happening in tandem. We started doing programming this summer there to do outreach, particularly among young people after we saw an uptick in gun violence. We averaged about 40 to 60 youth per session at the King Center for those 8 weeks. Most of them responded to the type of programming that was speaking to their needs and didn't have a clinical lens, but there was a whole undercurrent of mental wellness that was the base and foundation of that. So that's just some of the very targeted work that we have done to work with populations engaged in gun violence. And we can see a significant impact in what they call hotspots or micro hotspots. Connie can speak to this as well, where we've seen in certain areas where consistent engagement does not only suppress or bring down numbers, it redirects negative activity and changes people's behavior and thinking along the way.
That's awesome. And Connie, can you raise your hand for me? We've talked about you a lot. I've had a lot of meetings with Connie virtually over the last 5 years. This is our first day meeting in person, so shout out to Connie. But I know a lot of folks get excited when they hear about the data behind all of this. So make sure you introduce yourself to Connie before you get out of here. Kent, I'm going to turn it to you for our final question, and we'll break out into some table discussions here. And maybe this is a question that everybody would love, but Kent, if you had $2 million of flexible dollars that arrived tomorrow, how would you allocate it across prevention, intervention, enforcement, and what metrics would appear on any public dashboards to say this is working to really prove your impact?
Well, all of these things we need together. So let's make it clear. There's not one thing that standing alone.
All right, $6 million.
Yeah, that'd be better. That's better.
Make it 30.
So I would take 75% of that at least and allocate it toward prevention and intervention. I'll speak to the enforcement piece of it first, which I think requires some investment too. And she talked at length, Heather did, about the technological tools out there. I support the use of those and the use of those responsibly. And another guardrail is my office. I mean, a lot of things related to search warrants, the issuance of criminal charges, all those things come through our office. So at the end of the day, they can use a tool, but it's got to pass the muster of being able to charge someone and prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. And their department knows that full well. But I think given the technological age we're living in right now, and given the fact that officers, we just don't have as many as we used to. That's a phenomenon, again, everywhere in this country, not just here. I think we need to find technology that's available and use it responsibly, and that can be done. Now, I think the prevention and intervention pieces are so critical here, and that's where I would like to see substantial investment. I mean, we know from the mayor's Camp Rise and Earn and Learn programs that young people who start to feel like they have a stake in something in this community probably won't find their way to my office. They just simply won't, but that needs to start at an early age. We know that young people need to feel a sense of hope for themselves in their lives, a sense of responsibility. We can all remember when we had our first job and how that made us feel. We can all remember that sense of ownership we had, personal responsibility, and the feeling that we were a stakeholder in our community. Whether we could say that or not, we know that's how we felt. If we doubled the mayor's program, I think that would cost $2 million alone. And the violence prevention work that we see is so critical. This is the work that David's talking about. This is work done literally as tensions are running high, emotions are running high, and there's the prospect of some retaliation. We have people at the city level, at the medical college, and at the county level who are intervening in these. This is the violence interruption work that's going on all the time. And it's hard work. But there's no doubt in my mind that is preventing shootings and homicides in the city. And the reason I say that is because now for years, the most popular reason why people say they shot somebody was because they felt disrespected. Okay, imagine that. That's how they're feeling. And they're telling us what the problem is here, right? The fact is that while there is no question, I think, that we have to continue to work hard at reducing crime here, reducing shootings, non-fatal shootings by 20% is substantial. And 2 years ago, I think we're down by about a third now. So those are substantial numbers that we can actually count. We know how many people in this community were shot this year and last year, the year before. We know those numbers. So at the same time, the same people they're talking with are the same people feeling disrespected, who have access to firearms, who are ready to act in an impulsive way, and they're literally interrupting that tendency to react in a way that is irrational to all of us, but rational in the mind of somebody in the moment. And I think that we can't place a value on that. And so I would like to see, again, that those programs continue to be funding at a high level, because I have no doubt that is preventing a call to 911 and then all of the other things we do responsively after that. And then the last thing I'd add is you had a program here recently related to nonprofits and all the work that's done here. And I've said this before, but many of our nonprofits we ought to consider as public safety assets. And you all know that. I mean, the fact is that anything we can find that's positive for a kid, and as early as we can find that for them and keep them engaged, We know that will develop their sense of self-esteem and self-worth, and they're much more likely, as we know, a person who cares about themselves is much more likely to care about the community surrounding them.
Just real quick, this ecosystem that we're talking about is the same ecosystem that when the floods happened and we were wondering if there was going to be emergency response, was able to mobilize in real time and empty out basements and go and start to partner with the United Way and do the Flood Hope Project. That nervous system of folks responding to crisis in community is deployable for not only when people are shooting each other, and it has built capacity and built efficacy. And one thing about that number 2 million, ironically or not, the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform says that that's the estimated cost of one homicide in Milwaukee. A non-fatal shooting is about $500,000. When you look at the cost to incarcerate a young person, if it wasn't for the governor's veto of the daily rate for juvenile corrections, we were at the point where we would have had to cut all of our prevention programs and cut many of our prevention services across the department. So it gave us a 2-year reprieve, but the cost to incarcerate a young person of about $500,000 a year was going to jump to $800,000 a year. It's much easier to make an argument to lock somebody up than it is sometimes to move the resources needed. And for those cities that have the double-digit decrease, they have investments that are significantly above what is estimated for Milwaukee. For us to see a double-digit decrease in homicides is going to take at least a $33 million investment.
Thank you for that. And we've got a slide that I think points to some of that that we'll share a little later on. First, thank you all for this portion of the conversation. We're going to turn it over to our table participants to do some discussion, and then we'll invite you guys back up for a Q&A. Let me make sure here. So for your discussions at your table, what we really want you to focus on is for the groups that you have convened at your table, where are there opportunities to get things done? So as we think about sustaining Milwaukee's progress related to public safety, we invite each table to collectively identify one action, tool, or approach that can help prevent and reduce violence in our community by addressing the underlying factors, such as food insecurity, economic hardship, childhood trauma, substance use, mental health challenges. So to guide your conversation, you all have some GMC notepads at the table that we usually never use. They sit there. We want you to use them today. All right, we want you to use them today. And think about how might we, coming from our respective sectors and industries, collaborate with others at this table to advance these efforts or ideas in 2026, right? How might you all, your diverse backgrounds and the folks at these tables, commit to or work on some of those underlying factors, right? You may think about what your organization is currently doing that you might be able to pull folks in on, what you might want to do in the future with some of these experts that are surrounding you. And then ultimately, and this is where that paper comes in, is we want you to write down, to turn this ideal into reality, we would need GMC to help buy and then fill in the blank. Make sure you leave those on the table. Make sure if you come up with a really good idea, write your names on it so we can follow up. But that's going to give us some of our next steps and momentum moving forward. So we've got about 10 minutes, and then we'll have some Q&A. Thanks. Give you all the chance to ask your questions of our panelists, which I'm sure you have. So I've got one mic. Heather's got a mic on that side of the room. Who's got a question? Yeah, in the back.
So I appreciate the discussion about technology, but I know that when the Wisconsin Policy Forum looked at the challenges with just the lack of staff capacity from police officers to prosecutors to defense attorneys, technology was part of that problem because now you have hours upon hours of video evidence that all of your staff have to somehow deal with and so forth. So I guess my question is, how do you deal with that, number one? Number two, might artificial intelligence be helpful to you in dealing with some of those negative consequences of increased use of technology?
Yeah, so there's no question that our job, the job of a prosecutor is a lot harder than it was when I started 28 years ago, because we just had pieces of paper and a few summary reports, and now we have a lot of things that are good, actually. They're good for the community, they're good for law enforcement. Everything's recorded now. All the statements are recorded, officers are wearing body cameras. That's a good thing, and not every community, even in Wisconsin, is doing that the way our police agencies are doing here in Milwaukee County. So that's very important, and I think it has actually contributed to what Dan was hearing around the police community relations piece, that everything is better because of that, except the job's harder, because we have to mine through all of that data. I do think that, and it's become impossibly hard, I think, for defense lawyers, which I think is actually maybe hastened some defense lawyers' retirements that I talked about earlier. It's really tough when they have to mine through hours and hours and hours around, a finite incident that happened, but their obligation is to look at every second of evidence related to their clients. So that's made their job really difficult. Could AI help? I think it could, certainly, and there are some of those programs emerging. It's one of those things we have invested, a fair amount of our budget now in this technology, because it's what we need, and it's buying the next product that will help us in theory, make our job easier.
And to that I say, yes, our officers do spend a lot of time mining through video footage and other things, but technology is going to make technology easier in terms of manpower. And one way I give an example is the Milwaukee Police Department has Community Connect. When people have cameras, we have to canvass neighborhoods and knock on doors and say, do you have video footage of this incident that took place here? Through Community Connect, the community itself lets us know they have a camera in a certain location and gives us a point of contact. So actually that type of technology makes it more efficient and reduces the amount of time that the officers need to focus on technology. The second piece is AI. We are exploring different tools that make it more efficient to get through, but I also kind of shudder because, technology in a police department is scary for a lot of our community. And if we expand into the world of AI, that's going to be even scarier. So as we're acquiring technology, we need to continue working really hard at building that community trust, just knowing the type of organization that we are, which is law enforcement.
Any questions over here? We've got, over here.
Great program, and thanks for having this, Joel. Terrific. It's a wonderful idea. And as Dan Breeder pointed out, there's a perception it's not safe, and that's important. So Dan Steininger, president of the Daniel Hone Foundation, 2 years ago, I launched this contest to look to the community for creative ideas for crime prevention. And we got terrific ideas, many of which you're now focused on and serving. One came out big, the use of technology. That's coming out. If you have a fire, the first thing you need to do is put out the fire. Then you can figure out who caused it. So drones emerged as the number one, and everyone here knows that if it weren't for drones, Ukraine would be gone from the face of the earth. The mayor has said we're in a war with crime in Milwaukee. Well, when you're in a war, you need technology. So the thought is, and to the panel and Heather, because we've listened to the police department and so forth, one thing we learned from you is that in order to get technology approved through the budget of the council or the sheriff's department for the county, is you have public hearings, and the people who show up are always against it. How can we get awareness of when these hearings occur so we can go and say, look, we're in favor of the use of technology. You don't have as many officers. This is a way of accelerating the use of crime prevention. Because when there's a drone up there, you're not going to get away with speeding or stealing cars. How do we know about those hearings so we at the GMC and others or our employees can show up? So and we need some sort of alert system.
Well, this is an opportunity for a public service announcement. Civic engagement is always important. And the way to know about meetings and meeting topics is a couple of ways. One, you can go to the City of Milwaukee website and sign up for different e-notifies. So if you're interested in, say, public safety and health issues, you can sign up to get e-notifications in your email of those meeting dates and times. All kinds of topics. And if that is of your interest, I encourage you all to go, even just Google City of Milwaukee, e-notify, you'll get to the website, you can sign up with your email. The second way is to look on the City of Milwaukee's website. There's the Legistar system. Legistar gives the dates and times of any meeting coming on the calendar as well as the agenda items. So if you do Google search for City of Milwaukee Legistar, you can pull up a calendar by week, by month, by year, and get a list of every and all city meeting of the Common Council, including agendas when they're posted. So those are two ways. And I encourage anyone to reach out to the police department as well. We are happy to share information when we're making those appearances at public hearings.
All right. Well, we are really running low on time, and I'm sure there's probably some other questions, and I really hope that you all came up with some really great answers to our question here, our prompt. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Dave. I should also mention really quick before Dave, or as Dave is coming up, David Mohammed sent over a really great slide deck that highlights a lot of the work that Milwaukee County is doing related to violence interruption, violence prevention in the community. We will share that with you all afterwards. It speaks to a lot of the dollars and cents of it all, as well as the work that's been going on as well. So we'll get to that. But Dave? Thanks, you all. Round of applause, please.
Well, thank you to all of our speakers for sharing their insights and updates on the important public safety efforts underway in Milwaukee. Your perspectives help illuminate both the challenges and opportunities facing our community. So we encourage the GMC members to consider how they can support and elevate the impactful work being led by public safety stakeholders and community leaders across the city. By engaging, collaborating, and leveraging our collective resources, we can strengthen these initiatives and drive meaningful progress. Together, we have an opportunity to create a safer, more resilient, and thriving Milwaukee for all residents. Before we adjourn, we have our monthly giveaway. This month is to the Hot Spell Sauna for you and a guest, and the winner is Devona Wright-Cottrell. Heather will email you. Our next membership meeting is January 12th. Between now and then, I hope everybody has a great holiday season. That meeting will be at the Marcus Center for the Performing Arts, right? Yeah? Good. Thanks for coming today. Appreciate your attendance and engagement. Thank you.